They abandoned me like I never mattered. But when their world fell apart, I was the only one left to save them. This is my story of pain, survival, and the power of choosing love. There was a time when I thought, if I disappeared from this world, no one would notice. No one would care. I grew up in a house that looked perfect from the outside, but somehow I always felt like an outsider. At every cozy family dinner, while my parents and younger brother laughed and talked, I just sat there quietly, listening to the pounding of my own heart, wondering if they even knew I was there. Even when I tried to be perfect, straight A's, polite, obedient, it never changed a thing. To them, I was like a broken piece of furniture, not worth keeping, certainly not worth loving. I still remember the exact day my life took a sharp turn. It started at the dinner table, an ordinary evening, until I dared to say my dream out loud. A dream that didn't fit into the carefully drawn plans they had for me. I want to be an artist. Just 7 words, but enough to shatter every hope they ever had for me. I'll never forget the way my father looked at me that night. His stare was sharp, like a blade, and every word he spoke cut deeper than the last. He called me a disgrace, a daughter who didn't understand the meaning of life, someone unworthy of carrying the Parker name. My mother? She just sat there, silent, no protest, no comforting hand, nothing. And Ethan, my younger brother? He smirked, like he'd been waiting for an excuse to erase me from their perfect family portrait. That night, I left home with nothing. No money, no plan, just a small suitcase and a heart full of cracks. Outside, the rain poured down, cold and relentless. I dragged my suitcase down the empty street, the freezing rain slapping my face. But the thing that hurt the most wasn't the rain. It was the feeling of being cast out by the very people who were supposed to love me. And in that moment, I realized something. From now on, I wasn't their daughter anymore. At first, after leaving home, I thought I would be okay. I believed that once I escaped that cold, empty house, I'd finally be free, that I'd find a better life waiting for me. But out here, the world was even colder than those walls I left behind. I had nowhere to sleep. The first few nights, I curled up on a wooden bench at the park, clutching my small suitcase, as if it was the last piece of my old life I had left. I didn't dare cry. I was afraid if I started, no one would be there to wipe my tears. No one would even notice. Because the truth is, the world doesn't wait for girls like me. During the day, I wandered the city streets, knocking on the doors of diners, small coffee shops, begging for any job that could help me survive. And finally, a little cafe on a corner took a chance on me. The work wasn't glamorous, wiping tables, washing cups, sweeping floors. But to me back then, it was everything. I worked tirelessly, like if I paused for even a second, my whole life might collapse. Every night after my shift, I would sit and draw. I'd borrow scraps of paper from the cafe, broken pencils that others had thrown away, and I drew, poured into every sketch all my sadness, all my anger, and all the dreams I thought I'd lost. I didn't know if my drawings were good. I just knew that when I was drawing, I didn't feel so alone anymore. For the first time in my life, even with no one beside me, I finally felt alive. Life went on, day after day, week after week. I got used to the loneliness, a kind of loneliness that didn't stab sharply but simmered quietly, like a fever that never quite broke. Then one day, the owner of the cafe, a man I thought barely even noticed I existed, asked me something that stopped me in my tracks. "Kid, you draw?" I had no idea when he had seen the messy sketches I kept hidden at the bottom of my suitcase. I nodded, my heart racing, half expecting a scolding. But instead, he just smiled. "Bring your drawings tomorrow. I want to see them." I had never imagined anyone would truly want to look at them. The next day, I brought my trembling, fragile drawings, sketched on crumpled scraps of old paper. He flipped through them saying nothing, until finally he placed a hand gently on my shoulder. "You've got talent, kid. Don't give up." Just one sentence, and it changed my entire world. For the first time, someone believed in me. Not because I carried the Parker name, not because I fit into some perfect mold my parents wanted, but because of me. Just me. I started drawing more, working harder. Little by little, my drawings found a small home in a corner of the cafe, and to my surprise, the customers noticed. Some even paid money to take them home. I wasn't just selling sketches. I was building something I'd never had before, belief in myself. But life doesn't go easy on girls like me. Just when I thought I had found my strength, fate reached out and dragged me right back to where it all began. It started with one unexpected phone call, a call from the past I had tried so hard to bury. One morning, while I was making coffee at the cafe, an unfamiliar number flashed on my phone. I answered without thinking much. But the moment I heard my mother's voice, my heart seized in my chest. "Emma, you have to come home. It's Ethan. He's in trouble." My whole body went numb. The words hit me like a punch I didn't see coming. Ethan, my little brother, the one who always seemed so full of life, so reckless. He was the last person I ever imagined would be in real danger. "Ethan had an accident. He's been arrested. You have to come now." She wasn't crying, but I could hear it in her voice. The exhaustion, the desperation. My family, they weren't the same family I had once known. Even though I no longer thought of myself as their daughter, I couldn't turn off the part of me that still cared. Love, responsibility, worry. They clung to me like an old second skin. I couldn't just walk away. I grabbed my things and rushed to catch the last bus back to my old city. It felt like walking straight into a memory I had spent so long trying to erase. When I finally arrived, the house looked nothing like the one I remembered. Old, dark, heavy with the weight of everything that had gone wrong. Inside, Ethan sat slumped on the couch, his eyes hollow, bruises blooming across his face. Physical proof of regrets he couldn't take back. But when I looked into his eyes, what I saw was even worse. Despair. "Emma, I messed up," he whispered, his voice cracking. I sat down beside him. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. In that moment, I knew I couldn't turn my back on them again. The entire house was wrapped in a terrifying kind of silence. My mother sat there, her eyes flickering between the bruises on Ethan's face and me, as if waiting to see what I would do next. Ethan kept his head down, unable to meet my eyes. He knew. I wasn't the same obedient girl they once thought they knew. "Why, Ethan?" I asked. My voice wasn't angry, but I couldn't hide the disappointment laced through it. He lowered his head even further, the weight of words he couldn't yet say, pressing down on him. I got mixed up with the wrong crowd," Ethan finally whispered, voice shaking. "It started as a joke, just a stupid joke, but then it spiraled out of control. I couldn't get out." I listened, silent, letting him speak. Even after everything, even after being cast out, I still couldn't stop caring. "Now I'm facing the consequences," Ethan continued, his voice barely a whisper. I got arrested for drug possession." The words hit me like a slap. The little brother I once knew, now tangled in something far darker than I could have ever imagined. I stood up, my mind blank, swallowed by helplessness, by despair. Once again, the family I had wished could be saved was crumbling under its own weight. But then, a thought sparked inside me. Was it still possible to change this? To help Ethan stand again, the way I had once fought to stand for myself? I looked at my mother, then at Ethan. "We can't give up," I said, even though deep down I wasn't sure. "We're family, and I'm not leaving you behind." The next day, I went to the police station with my mother. The air inside was thick, cold, heavy with tension. I used to think that leaving my old house behind meant I would never have to face this kind of pain again, but here I was. Not for myself, but for my brother. Ethan sat there, handcuffed, his head bowed so low he couldn't even look at me. The officer read the charges out loud, every word slicing deeper into me like a blade. I don't know where I found the strength, but somehow I stood up and said something I'll remember for the rest of my life. I will find a way to prove Ethan's innocence. Even if he made mistakes, he's still just a kid who got dragged into the wrong world. The officer didn't say anything. He just looked at me, a gaze that was both stern and quietly sympathetic. Maybe he had seen too many families like ours, shattered, hurting, trying desperately to stitch themselves back together with whatever hope they had left. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. I had no money, no lawyer, and worst of all, no real trust from the family I once belonged to. But I had made up my mind. I would save Ethan, whatever it took. That night when we got back home, I sat beside my mother for hours. She didn't speak, just stared into the empty space in front of her. "I know I was cast aside," I whispered, "but I'm still your daughter." And for the first time in so many years, I saw her cry. No coldness, no distance, just a mother mourning the daughter she had nearly lost. After that night, I wasn't the abandoned daughter anymore. I knew if I gave up now, Ethan would lose his last chance to turn his life around, and maybe I would lose the only reason I still believed in the word family. I started digging for answers. I went to every corner of the city Ethan had ever hung around, talked to people I had never once cared to know before, and what I uncovered was a truth more bitter than any betrayal. Ethan hadn't been dealing drugs like the police suspected. He'd been set up by his best friend, the one person he trusted the most. They had planted the drugs in his backpack, the anger, the heartbreak. It hit me all at once like the ground had dropped out from beneath my feet. Ethan had trusted the wrong person, and now it was up to me to race against time and prove he wasn't the criminal they thought he was. I spent sleepless nights piecing together every tiny scrap of evidence I could find. Old messages, forgotten security footage, anything that might tell the real story. And then, when I was almost ready to give up, I found it. A blurry security video from a corner store near where it all happened. Just a few seconds long, but enough. Clear as day, it showed Ethan's so-called friend slipping the package into his bag. I sat there, watching it over and over, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hit replay. I had it. The proof. Now there was only one thing left to do. Pull Ethan out of the pit someone else had thrown him into. Part 8. English version. The next morning, I walked into the police station, holding a USB drive, the only thing that could change Ethan's fate. I don't know where I found the courage. Maybe it was the fear of losing everything again, or maybe deep down I knew if I didn't fight for him, no one else would. I sat across from the officer, laying everything out, detail by detail. He watched the video in silence, and when the image appeared, showing Ethan's so-called friend slipping the package into his bag, the entire room seemed to freeze. "Are you sure this is the original footage?" he asked. I nodded, forcing my voice to stay steady. "I'm willing to testify in court if I have to." With that one sentence, I put everything on the line, every shred of faith I had left. Once my family had cast me aside, forced me to leave the only place I ever called home. But now I was standing here, fighting for them, fighting for what was left of my heart. A few days later, Ethan was released. When he walked out through those iron gates, the look he gave me wasn't shame anymore. It was gratitude, deep, raw, and heartbreaking. "Why, Emma?" he asked, voice trembling. "After everything, why would you still do this for me?" I smiled, even though my throat tightened with emotion. "Because you're my brother," I said, and I never stopped believing in that. In that moment, I understood something crystal clear. It's not blood, not titles, not appearances, but love. Love is what saves us. I thought it was over when Ethan was released, but it wasn't. It was only the beginning of a different kind of nightmare. My family, the same people who had once turned their backs on me, now had to face a harsh truth. Everything they had tried to bury for years was finally out in the open. My father, the man who had always stayed silent, now dropped to his knees in front of me. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice rough and broken, like every word weighed more than he could carry. "I was wrong back then. I pushed you away. I never gave you a chance. But now, you're the one who saved this family." I stood there, not feeling the pain I once thought would consume me. Instead, there was only emptiness, vast and cold. I didn't know if I could forgive him. Maybe forgiveness isn't about forgetting the wounds, but about learning to live with them without letting them define you. That night, when Ethan came home, my mother cooked dinner. The first family meal we had shared in years. No one spoke about the past. No one mentioned the mistakes, the betrayals, the nights filled with silence. There were no words, just a strange, quiet warmth that wrapped around us all. As I looked around the table, I realized something. No matter how deep the hurt runs, no matter how many times we break, family is the place our hearts will always try to return to. And in that moment, I knew. I had saved them. Not with money, not with pride, but with the only thing I had ever truly owned: forgiveness. After that dinner, I started to realize some losses can never be fully healed. But somehow, we learned to live with them anyway. My family wasn't the family I had once dreamed of as a child. Everything had changed, and so had I. Ethan was quieter now. Gone was the reckless, wild boy I used to know. He started picking up odd jobs, saving every penny he could. I knew he was trying to pay back the world for the chances he had once thrown away. My mother, once so cold and distant, had softened too. Every morning she would quietly set a cup of coffee in front of me. No words, just a silent gesture, heavy with gratitude, and perhaps a little too late regret. And my father, he was still a man of few words, but sometimes I would catch him sighing, deep and heavy, whenever he looked in my direction. Maybe the greatest pain for a father isn't when his child fails, but when he realizes he's the one who let her down first. Life slowly found its rhythm again, but none of us were the same. We had learned no more careless words, no more taking each other for granted. I don't know what the future holds, but I know this much. Even though I was once cast aside, it was me, the little girl they once pushed away, who brought this family back together. And maybe that's enough for a heart that has weathered more storms than it ever should have. Life isn't a movie with a neat ending. There's no "the end" flashing across the screen, no swelling soundtrack to tell you everything is okay now. After everything, I realized my family still had cracks, spaces that maybe would never be filled again. But one thing was certain: the girl once abandoned and cast aside, had become the anchor for the very people who once broke my heart. And strangely enough, when I stopped blaming them, life somehow felt lighter. The world was still harsh, but I wasn't as easy to break anymore. If you're listening to this story, maybe you have your own scars too. Maybe you were the child left behind. Maybe you're still trying to piece yourself back together from the wreckage of your own childhood. If you are, leave me a comment below. Tell me your story. I would love to hear how you made it through. And if my story touched something inside you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because there are so many more stories coming, raw, painful, and real. You're not alone out there. I'm listening, and so are so many others. Time moved on, day by day, hour by hour, and little by little things in my family began to change. But there was one thing that could never be recovered: the years I lost. Because I was cast aside. You know, some scars heal, but their marks never truly disappear. No matter how hard my family tried to make amends, the memory of being abandoned would always haunt me. And sometimes I wonder, what if I hadn't saved Ethan? What if I had turned my back on them the way they once turned theirs on me? Maybe my life would have been easier. Maybe there would have been less pain, less regret. But my heart? It would have stayed silent, trapped in bitterness forever. I chose to save my family. Not because they deserved it, but because I deserved a soul that could breathe freely. If you're still listening to this story, maybe you understand that feeling too, growing up through pain and still choosing love. Please share your story in the comments below. I'll read every word. The same way I once wished someone had read mine. And if this story made you pause, made you feel even just for a moment, don't forget to subscribe. The stories ahead might just be the missing piece you've been searching for. In the end, I realized something. Family isn't always perfect, and people only change when the pain cuts deep enough. On the day Ethan finally recovered, we all sat around the dinner table, sharing a simple meal. No fancy dishes, no wine, no celebration cakes, just ordinary food. But that day, for the first time in years, we truly sat together, like a family. No one spoke of past mistakes, no one pointed fingers. We just ate quietly, stealing glances at each other. Glances filled with a little awkwardness, a little warmth, and maybe a whole lot of gratitude. Maybe forgiveness doesn't always need to be spoken aloud. Sometimes it's in the small things, in a meal, in a look, in the simple act of choosing to stay. And I understood, more deeply than ever. If I had chosen to walk away that day, I would have lost so much more than just a family. So this is it. My life? It was never a fairy tale, and it sure didn't end like a perfect Hollywood movie. I'm just a girl who was abandoned, forgotten, but also the only one who saved her family in the end. And now, I don't need their apologies. I don't need them to change just to make things right. All I need is to know that no matter how the world spins, I didn't let hatred destroy the person I was meant to be. I chose forgiveness. I chose love. And most importantly, I chose to save myself before I saved anyone else. If you're still listening, maybe somewhere in this story, you saw a part of yourself too. If you did, leave a comment below. Tell me your story. And if you feel this story was worth your time, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next ones, the ones that just might find their way into your heart, the way this one once found its way into mine. Because sometimes, just one story can change an entire life. If you felt something in this story, drop a comment, share your truth, and don't forget to subscribe because the next story might be the one that saves you.